And so the topic of today's presentation is East meets West, and I'm providing a global snapshot of the issue. So East meets West, a real talk on the pros and cons of using standardized tests as assessment tools of students in mathematics and science. Globally, what appears to work and not work. My name is Dr. Patrice J. Pinder. I am an independent STEM education researcher with general research interests in equity, equality, social justice, and science STEM education broadly. I'm currently exploring the utilization of game-based learning in primary or elementary schools with specific focuses in the STEM subjects of math and science. Additionally, I am exploring STEM achievement differences between Black student groups, that is, students of African descent, immigrant versus Native student groups. And this particular area, I actually did a presentation last week, Thursday, on that specific research area. And I am also looking at globalized standardized tests or testing measures and its impact on students' achievement. And so hence the presentation for today. So student assessment involves the process of evaluating a student's ability and achievement. Typically, students' abilities and achievement can be assessed through either formative or summative measures, with the latter being formal and official in nature. I think many of you know that formative assessments can be either formal or informal, but summative assessments or summative measures are usually formal and official. So one type of summative assessment is the various standardized tests, which are global or country-specific. Some examples are the global PISA or Program for International Student Assessment, which is an exam typically given to 15-year-olds. So in most parts of the world, I think 15-year-olds are usually those within grade 10 or year 10 of high school. Then there's the global TIMSS or Trends in International Mathematics and Science, which is an exam given to 4th and 8th grade students in the subject areas of mathematics and science. Then there are or were standardized exams administered by individual countries and or states within a country. Some examples of standardized exams, or what I would classify as standardized testing or testing measures, are the US's national standardized college entrance exams, such as the ACT or American College Testing, also the SAT or Scholastic Aptitude Test, which are now optional for the college entrance classes of 2023 and 2024. So the ACT and SAT are typically given in high school. The literature says typically in grade 11, and in some instances in the first semester of grade 12 or year 12. Then there were the high school exit examinations, which were issued at the state level in most of the US states, but some of which have been eliminated in some states. Other countries like England, Wales, Ireland, and even some Caribbean countries like the Bahamas offer their own national standardized high school assessments. In the case of the UK, there is the British GCSEs or General Certificate of Secondary Education, which is typically given in year 11 or grade 11. And then the additional year 12, there is the A-levels. But for the sake of this study, I'm not focusing on the A-levels, but rather more on the General Certificate of Secondary Education or the British GCSE exams. For the Bahamas, there is the BGCSEs or the Bahamas General Certificate of Secondary Education, which is kind of like a newer form of exams that replace the old British or London GCE O-levels, which would have been the exams that I would have taken some time back. And so these exams actually replaces the old British GCE O levels. And again, it's called the Bahamas General Certificate of Secondary Education. And they're similar to the current UK's GCSE exams. So all of these exams are typically offered in or taken in year 11 or year 12. Again, in the case of the UK, it's more year 11 in terms of the GCSEs. In terms of the Bahamas, it's more restricted to grade 12. However, there are some students, some exceptional students per se, who are allowed to take it a bit earlier in grades 10 and 11. So standardized tests, what is the bigger picture, or what are the bigger pictures per se? So standardized tests are large-scale tests given to large populations of students and are administered and scored in a consistent or standard way, with all test takers being required to answer the same questions or selection of questions drawn from a common bank of questions. Some might consist of just multiple choice items or predominantly multiple choice items, as was or is the case of the SAT, ACT exams. And some might have varied types of content items. So there are some exams that would have had or currently have a combination of multiple choice items as well as BCRs or brief constructed response items. And then you would have the extended constructed responses, kind of like your essay questions is what I kind of think of when I think of the ECR or extended constructed response items. So some of the US's statewide tests consisted of the varied types of content items. Definitely the Bahamas' BGCSE exams, they consist of the varied types of items, right? Particularly your biology exams, etc. Despite the nature of their content items, standardized tests are scored in a standard or consistent manner, making it possible to compare an individual student's or group of students' performance. So purpose and significance of this work. So as stated beforehand, this is preliminary work, which is still in progress and is being revised and reworked periodically. The current objective was to present this paper in order to begin to show a more comprehensive global snapshot of the various select standardized exams or standardized summative measures to see what appeared to be working and not working across select countries. In looking at and examining students' performance on the various standardized tests, I want to see if these types of testing are benefiting students worldwide, from the region of Asia to Europe to North America to Central, South, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Are students doing well on these exams? And which countries are the higher performers and which the lesser performers, specifically in respect to mathematics and science? In examining students' test scores on the global or generalized PISA and TIMSS assessment measures and specific country designed standardized tests, what might the story really reveal? Or really, what is the story currently revealing? Or in the past, what have the stories revealed? So in looking at tables of data and other reports, including news reports obtained from multiple sites and within the last 20 years in some instances, I want to be able to give some candid and real and honest views in an attempt to inform educators globally. So a bit of background to some of the standardized tests that I'm going to talk to you about today. So I'm going to provide some background information on the global TIMSS, PISA, British GCSEs, ACT, SAT, statewide assessments, and the Bahamas' BGCSEs. So the first look is at the TIMSS, or the Trends in International Math and Science Study. So again, this is a large-scale assessment or testing measure administered to students in grades 4 and 8. It was first administered in 1995 and has been given in 4-year intervals ever since. So you had the first sitting in 1995, then 4 years later in 1999, 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015, and then 2019. The next sitting of the exam or the next administration is scheduled for 2023. So I looked at info very recently, and the exam hasn't been sat, or I should say administered yet. But however, when it will be administered, it would be administered as an electronic version or an e-TIMSS version, right? That type of format started in 2019. So TIMSS usually has participation from 70 countries, but the TIMSS 2019 saw a reduction in the number of countries participating. So there was about 60 countries that participated in the last TIMSS 2019, specifically for the fourth grade assessment level. And approximately 600,000 students actually took the exam, again, with respect to the fourth grade assessment level. So this exam is administered in two forms, math and science. And the areas in mathematics that are looked at or assessed are number, algebra, and geometry. And in science, the areas that are assessed are earth science, biology, and chemistry. Also, cognitive domains of knowing, reasoning, and application or applying skills were also reported. So I'm going to present to you a series of tables, and there are more or less tables of abbreviated data, right? So I looked at the raw data, which were extensive, and I basically wanted to hit home at the key points, which were to show some of the top performing countries and some of the lower performing countries, rather than present a whole table of raw data, which of course, you, the members of the audience, can always peruse the website, various websites to explore the extensive data yourself if you want to. So tables of abbreviated data. And so TIMSS 2019 results. So the first table shows 8th grade math students' results and the top 12 performing countries and some lower performing countries. And so in red are the top performing countries, which were really the Asian bloc of countries, namely Singapore, Chinese Taipei, South Korea, Japan, and Hong Kong. The countries in blue are the ones that I identified as more or less European-based countries. And so they were the next tier of higher performers. So you had Ireland, Lithuania, and then you had Hungary, all within the top 10. And then the outliers per se that were neither Asian-based, that were neither an Asian-based country nor a European-based country were number 9, Israel, and number 12, the US. So all of these countries, the average for their students' performance on the 8th grade math exam were above the established standard score of 500 points. Some of the lower performing countries with scores less than the international average of 500 points in math were Morocco, with 388 points. And so they were 112 points below the established average standard of 500 points. Africa's Egypt, South Africa at 389 points, or they were 111 points below established average standard. Then you had South America, Chile at 441 points. For table 2, still sticking with the TIMSS 2019 results. So table 2 shows the 8th grade science results, students' results, top 13 performing countries and some lower performing countries. So again, the countries in red, the Asian bloc countries, again, they were the top performers. Singapore, Chinese Taipei, Japan, South Korea, followed by the European-based countries. You had Finland, Hungary, all the way to Sweden and Portugal. And again, the outliers were Australia in number 9 and the US in number 11. Some of the lower performing countries, again, were Africa's Morocco, Africa's Egypt, South Africa, South America, Chile, right? So all of these countries, the scores were, or the average score were on the 8th grade science were less than the established 500 points standard score per se. Table 3, 4th grade math students results, top 12 performing countries and some lower performing countries. So again, the Asian bloc of countries dominated Singapore, Hong Kong, South Korea, Chinese Taipei, Japan, and then followed by the European bloc of countries, all making up the top 12. And some of the lower performers, again, with the international average mark or points being less than 500 points, were Morocco, Montenegro, South Africa, and Chile. And table 4, which shows the 4th grade science students results, top 14 performing countries. So again, you had the Asian bloc of countries dominating Singapore, South Korea. Russia was in 3rd, then you had Japan in 4th, Chinese Taipei in 5th, and then you had the European countries, again, with the outlier being the US in the 8th position and Australia in number 14. Some of the lower performing countries, again, repeatedly, Morocco, Montenegro, South Africa, and Chile. Data results, TIMSS 2015, so table 5, 8th grade math results, top 14 countries with an international average standard score of 500 or above. So again, the story is the same. The Asian bloc of countries dominated the top five positions. You had Russia in 6, Kazakhstan in 7. Canada was kind of, again, the outlier in number 8, Ireland in number 9, US in number 10, and then the European countries. Lower performers, Chile, Egypt, Botswana, Morocco, South Africa. Table 6, TIMSS 2015, 8th grade science results, top 14 countries. Again, the Asian bloc of countries, followed by the European, with the US and Canada in the midst, as I would say, as the outliers. Lower performers, some of them were Chile, Egypt, Botswana, Morocco, and South Africa. Table 7, 4th grade math results, top 10 performing countries. This is TIMSS 2015. Again, Asian bloc of countries dominated the top 5 positions. And from 6 to 10, you have the European countries and a few of the lower performers, again, Chile and Morocco. 4th grade science results, top 10 performing countries, same storyline, Asian bloc of countries, followed by the European countries. The US was the outlier, number 10. Some of the lower performers were Chile and Morocco. And table 9 shows just an abbreviated snapshot of the top performing Asian and European countries on the TIMSS. And this would have been from the earlier period of 1995, 1999, and 2003. And this is a science skills score, so average score. So again, the earlier story reads the same as the prior or the latter storyline that I just showed you. And so again, the Asian bloc of countries in red dominated Singapore, Chinese Taipei, Republic of Korea, Hong Kong, Japan. European countries, next top tier of performers, Netherlands, Sweden, Belgium, Scotland, Norway, all above the established score of 500 points, with the exception of Norway in 2003, where the average score or science scale score was reported at 494 points. Some of the lower performers or lower performing countries were Chile, Tunisia, and South Africa. So that's the abbreviated snapshot of the TIMSS international or global exam. So the next focus is on the PISA or PISA, Program for International Student Assessment exam. So the PISA exam is an initiative of the OECD, or the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. I said it before, it is typically given to 15-year-olds. And as I also stated, in some parts of the world, 15-year-olds are typically in grade 10 or in year 10 of high school. So it assesses what the students have learned over the years to be able to solve real-world problems. Like the TIMSS exam, it looks at the areas of or students' abilities in math and science, but it also looks at or assesses reading as well. It is administered once every 3 years and was first administered in the year 2000. The administering period has been 2000, 2003, 2006, 2009, 2012, 2015, 2018. And the next sitting, the literature stated, would be 2022. So far, there is no data available for 2022, and the last set of available data was for 2018. The 2018 exam involves 79 countries and about 600,000 students worldwide. China, specifically the areas of Beijing, Shanghai, Jiangsu, and Shenzhen, emerged as the higher performers in the assessed areas of the PISA 2018. So again, I show you an abbreviated or a shortened table of data. And so table 10A, top performers and bottom performers on the PISA 2018, when looking at the average score for math, science, and reading. So I think they combined the score. And again, they looked at the benchmark, or the established average was the 500 points. So that remains consistent. And so again, the Asian countries dominated this exam as well, just as they did in the TIMSS international exam. So again, China was the top performer, followed by Singapore, Macau, Hong Kong. You had Estonia in the midst, and then you have the Asian countries again, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan, rounding out the top 8. From the 10 to the 12 to the 14th spot, was dominated by the European countries, Finland, Poland, Ireland, down to the United Kingdom. And the outliers, number 8 was Canada, number 15 was New Zealand. Part 10B, some of the lower performers with the average score of the math, science, and reading being less than 500 points were Chile, Montenegro, Costa Rica, Peru, Brazil, Morocco, and Panama. The next table shows of the science literacy scale, top 10 performing countries, the PISA science exam. And again, this would be, this would be the 2015 results. Again, the story reads the same. Singapore, Japan, top 2 spots, Estonia 3rd, Chinese Taipei 4th, Finland 5th, Macau 6th, Vietnam, Hong Kong, and China rounding off the top 10, with the outlier being Canada, earning the top 7 spot. Some of the worst performing countries were the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Dominican Republic. South America's Costa Rica, Colombia, Mexico, Montenegro, Brazil, and Peru. Table 12, same storyline. The Asian bloc of countries dominated, with the European countries in the 8th and 9th position. And some of the worst performing countries were Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, Trinidad and Tobago, Mexico, Dominican Republic, Tunisia, Colombia, and Peru. Moving away from the global TIMSS, and PISA, the second major focus of this presentation paper is on the British GCSEs. So according to Wikipedia, the British GCSE is an assessment or exam or test that examines a student's academic qualification in a particular subject. For example, either math, biology, physics, English language, and so forth. It is a qualifying high school standardized exam or test administered to students in England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, with students taking it at the end of year 11 or grade 11. Started in 1988, the exam is one of the requirements for students to obtain a school leaving certificate and to qualify for entrance to college or university in the UK. There is an established attainment 8 score, which it is recommended that students obtain. And so basically the attainment 8 score looks at students' performance in 8 critical subject areas. Moreover, the scoring rubric has changed in 2022 for England, but remains the same for Wales and Northern Ireland. For Northern Ireland, the scoring rubric uses the 9-to-1 and A through G scheme, where a score of 9 or a grade of A is the highest performance, and a score of 1 or a grade of G is indicative of the lowest performers on the exam. In the case of Wales, it has retained the A through G grading scheme, and for England, as of 2022, the old grading scheme of A through G has been replaced with the point scoring system of 9-to-1. And so this is basically the scale. So the old scale was A through G, where A, of course, is the highest performers or represents the highest performance. Then you have the D through G, which would be the lower performers. The new grading scale uses the 9-through-1 system, where 9 is the highest performance and 1 being the lowest. And the midpoint or the passing level is the C grade or the 5, the 5 score, which represents strong pass, or the 4 score, which represents a standard pass. For the general 2018 to 2019 GCSE Attainment 8 score results, including math and English subjects. So there were several groups that were looked at. You had the other Asian group, the Black ethnic group, the Chinese grouping, the mixed group, and the white grouping. And the Chinese group scored got the highest overall score, or attainment 8 score of 64.3, right, of 64.3, followed by the Indian grouping of 57.3. In terms of the Black grouping, the Black African grouping was at a 47.3 score, and the Black Caribbean grouping was at 39.4. The lowest grouping were the Gypsy Rumor at the 19.1 level, and the Irish Travelers at 26.6. So they were the next lower group of performers. Overall, for the British GCSEs, like seen with the TIMSS and PISA data results, Asian students consistently outperform their white and Black peers. Specifically, Chinese students and specifically Chinese females did very well on their GCSE's Attainment 8 score, consistently scoring above 60 points. My third focus of this presentation of papers on the US various forms of standardized tests, namely the ACT, SAT, and I'll do a brief look at two statewide tests that were previously offered. So the ACT is now optional. Again, it's a college admission standardized test which measures what students would have learned in school and their preparedness for college. Made up of primarily multiple choice questions. It assesses students in 4 subject areas, namely math, science, reading, and English. And the writing test is an option for students. Scores range from 1 to 36. The 4 subject areas are reported as a cumulative score for each student taking the exam, and the exam is given in grade 11 or the first semester of grade 12 in the US. Ford and Triplett examined 81,000 students' results on the ACT test taken from 2014 to 2015 in North Carolina. They looked at results by racial or ethnic groups and reported this. So for the ACT scores by race ethnicity, scores above the average of, or the state average of 19.0. Again, the Asian group dominated with the total points being 21.9 out of a total of 36 points. The white or Asian group was next at 20.5, and then the groups that scored below the established state average of 19 points were the Hispanic group, the American Indian group, and the black grouping. For the SAT, Table 13, SAT means scores of high school seniors taking the SAT by sex and race ethnicity. And so for this table of data, which was obtained from the NEAS or NCES 2021, basically it stated that males versus females, for the total SAT score, males outperformed that of females. For the main score, for the evidence-based reading and writing, females outperform males. And for the math average score, males outperform females. With respect to race and ethnicity, the Asian grouping for the total SAT score, their points were, the average score was 1,239 points. And the lowest performing groups were the Alaskan Native or American Indians at 927 points. For the reading and writing combined section, the Asian grouping again scored the highest average score of 597 points, and the Alaskan Native or American Indians scored the lowest at 468 points. For math, the highest performing group were the Asians at 642, and the Alaskan Native Indians were at 450, the lowest performing groups were the Black group on the math, which was, the average score was 457 points. So besides the aforementioned ACT, SAT, there is also the NARA US statewide assessments. As of 2019, there are only 13 states which still requires students to pass a test in order to get a high school diploma. Most of the other states have abandoned that idea, and students just need to complete a comprehensive or cumulative project or portfolio in order to satisfy the requirement for graduation. Examples of prior state assessments, and these are some older snapshots of the Maryland HSA and Florida FCAT. And just for comparison, I decided to compare Baltimore City school system with Montgomery County public school system versus the state of Maryland. And so the next table shows the percentages of Baltimore City, Montgomery County, and Maryland students scoring at the proficient level or above on the 2006 Algebra and Biology HSA. And again, the content areas assessed were mathematics and science or biology. So when Baltimore City students were compared on average to Montgomery County students, they performed, they were the lesser performers. In comparison to the state of Maryland as a whole, again, Baltimore City students perform less than in the lower tier. And in comparison of Montgomery County to the state of Maryland as a whole, the students fared very well on both the math and science HSA from that period. In the case of the Florida FCAT, again, this is an older snapshot of what the story read at that time. And for the state of Florida for 2006, when you looked at the area of mathematics and science, and again, I looked at the area of Dade County versus Palm Beach County versus the state as a whole. And so for mathematics, specifically for that time period, the Dade County students performed at a proficient level or 62% proficiency level, which actually was 1 percentage point above that of the state. With respect to Palm Beach County, Dade County students performed, their proficiency level was lower than that of Palm Beach County, which was higher at the 69% proficiency level. For science, again, Palm Beach County students performed slightly higher. And so there was 36% of their students that actually hit the proficiency level or higher on the science exam. Dade County students, basically 25% of them achieved that. And so they perform lower than or lesser than students when assessed across the whole state of Florida. So line graph of some results. Again, this is an older snapshot of the story from 2002 to 2006. So the yellow line represents Baltimore City, pink Maryland, and the blue Montgomery. And so you can clearly see that Baltimore City students performed lower than, or their proficiency level in algebra or on the HSA or the high school assessment algebra were less than that for the state of Maryland as a whole, and for Montgomery County as well. Figure 2, basically, so this is the line graph of Florida's mathematics FCAT proficiency results by state and county for 2002 to 2006. And this is Dade County's in pink, yellow represents the state of Florida, and blue represents Palm Beach County. So again, you see, well, Dade County are the lesser performers with the exception of the 2006 results. Yellow would represent the state of Florida. So Dade County students predominantly perform less than or lower than or hit a lesser proficiency level for the years 2002 to 2005. So the exception being 2006. Palm Beach County students performed higher consistently from 2002 to 2006. Line graph of algebra HSA results by race and ethnicity for 2002 to 2006. So the blue line represents Blacks, yellow represents Hispanics, and the pink represents whites. So you can see the story. Black students are the lower performers, followed by the Hispanics, and the white students dominate. The next line graph of mathematics FCAT results by race and ethnicity for 2002 to 2006. For the state of Florida, again, Blacks perform lower than or hit a lesser proficiency level than Hispanics and whites. So the fourth and final focus or snapshot is that of the Caribbean exams, specifically the Bahamas standardized exam or the BGCSE examination. So Corley Patterson in 2008, in a quantitative study entitled "The National Average is the D, Who is to Blame?" She outlines the results of 5,762 students who sat the examination. The majority of the students achieved a D grade, specifically a D grade overall. And as for the subject of mathematics, out of the total of 5,762 students who took the exam, the reported national average was an E+. Specific breakdowns of the math performance were as follows. So 1,089 students got A through C passes, distributed as 2.2% of students got an A pass grade, 2.9% of students got a B grade, and 20.3% of the students got a C passing grade. The remainder of the students, 3,188 of them got the lower D through U failure. And a U grade is simply regarded as unclassified or unqualified. Under the headline, dismal exam results persist, Bahamas' senior reporter and journalist, Ms. Jasper Ward, revealed that on the 22 BGCSE results, students continue to perform poorly, thus continue on the yearly trend of dismal performance on the examinations. Specifically, only 12.9% or 633 out of 4,906 students who sat the exam achieved the basic or standard requirement of A through C passes in 5 subject areas. And 87.1% or about 4,273 of the students who sat the exam did not attain the basic or standard required A through C passes in 5 subject areas, including math and English. Similarly, in 2021, the results were similar, with only 10% of students achieving the standard A through C passes in 5 subject areas. Equally disturbing was the fact that only 8% of students in the 2022 sitting actually got a C grade or higher in the subject areas of math, science, and English. And again, this was all data provided by Jasper Ward, a senior reporter from the National Guardian, on August 26, 2022. She provided that set of data. So the continuous yearly poor performance of the Bahamian students on the standardized exams have been documented over almost a 20-year period from 2005 to 2022. And so the news headlines during that period or exam results period typically reads, dismal exam results persist, national exams performance in core subjects dropped 47%, exam results table depressing again, results expose failing schools, and BJC and BGCSE exam results worsens. So those are some of the typical headlines. So further discussion. So critical questions which really guides or further guides this discussion. When we examine the global TIMSS and PISA exam data reports, can the argument be made that some developed and rich, wealthier countries place more emphasis on learning and preparing their students for the global test than do some developing, poorer or less resource nation? Are the global and or country-specific standardized testing or testing regime really working for poor or less wealthy countries and or school district schools and their students? Are Asians and Europeans dominating these exams? Why? Is it because they might be from wealthier countries who financially support global tests like TIMSS? Or do these countries place greater emphasis on the importance of learning and producing effective future leaders in science and math than do some other countries? Even in analyzing the data findings of the country-specific standardized tests, it was seen that students from wealthy school districts, private independent schools in the case of the Bahamas, and students primarily of the higher socioeconomic bracket and of the Asian and European grouping seem to be outperforming the other students. Could it be that culture and the way a group or members of a group view education and learning, could that be more also a pivotal thing? So some research literature do believe that culture, or again, the way one may view learning or the whole learning process, placing an importance on it or not, that might be a key player. Or again, do some groups have more financial privilege or access to more educational resources and resource people in their countries or school districts than other groups? And so perhaps wealth or finance play a greater influencing role in some students or group of students' academic success or performance on standardized testing. Additionally, could it be that the global TIMSS and even country-specific standardized tests, could these tests be viewed as grossly archaic in nature, simply out of date, and therefore out of touch with some students or student groupings, and so might not be a true measure of a student's ability? Or might there be simply a cultural mismatch? That is, can a Native American student, can some of them or some students representing the Black grouping or whatever have you, could it simply be a mismatch between the type of cultural or culturally related questions that are asked on these exams, questions that are more mainstream and Eurocentric per se, and therefore not questions that may not be in sync or in line with the cultural backgrounds of some of the students. Finally, are some schools' curriculum weak and deficient? And if so, how can they adequately align with the contents or tested areas of the global TIMSS or even their own country-specific tests? So these are pressing and concerning questions which all lay the foundation for any further discussion. So some of the pros of these type of exams, or standardized tests in general. So these type of exams, in a sense, could motivate teachers to teach the standard curriculum content. It also can, tests and testing might lead to increased emphasis on student achievement, which can be seen as a good thing. And these type of tests and testing measures can identify weak areas in country and or schools' curriculum and curriculum contents, which once identified can be addressed and improved upon. Some of the cons, all standardized tests, whether global ones or country-specific ones, or statewide tests, may have negative consequences. So they may not really measure or accurately assess a student's ability or accurately predict a student's ability to take on college level work, as is the case of the US ACT and SAT. To that end, can these standardized tests measure what every student knows? Can a single test taken at one single setting, can it truly assess a student's ability when not all students learn or test in the same manner? So can one test fits all, or one test assesses all students' approach? Can it really work, especially in the 21st century? So these tests are not individualized tests, which can cater to each individual student's ability. Students are heterogeneous in their learning processes and testing needs. Therefore, not everyone learns in the same manner or tests uniformly, as there are some students who might not test well because of test anxiety or other psychosocial learning conditions or conditions as a whole. Therefore, one cannot believe that these types of standardized tests could be a good fit for all students. Again, the question of the exams being old and antiquated is a big elephant in the room per se. Nevertheless, there are some governors and others who are trying to move away from these type of testing regime. And one governor, Governor Ron DeSantis from the state of Florida, is definitely getting an A grade for his progressive stand in presenting Senate Bill 1048, called the Florida Assessment of Student Thinking, or FAST, which was presented on March 14, 2022. And what this basically does or entails is the creation of students' progress or monitoring reports are critical or a key part or component of this plan. And so instead of having that one test or one-time testing or the FCAT as in the past, or the Florida Standards Assessment, which replaced the FCAT or the FSA. So instead of having that one testing period and students having to take that one test to assess everything, instead, the state of Florida have eliminated that, completely replacing them instead with progress monitoring reports to measure students' growth and learning over a period of time. So the new progress monitoring system, in lieu of the high-stakes standardized test, is individualized and would allow students' progress to be checked or monitored over a course of a year, each year, and would identify students' weaknesses or deficiencies so that they can be addressed. So the progress monitoring report was supposed to take place, was supposed to replace the high-stakes Florida Standards Assessment, or FSA, and should have taken effect during the 2022 to 2023 academic year. So in addition to the US, and the state of Florida, the British in the UK, in the UK, there's a call, and there has been a call since COVID-19 for the abolishing of the British GCSE exams. Again, these exams are seen or viewed as being archaic and out of date. And you have leaders such as the former education secretaries, teachers union presidents, all pretty much calling for the abolition of these exams and for there to be multiple measures used to assess students' overall performance. And so they're looking at things like a combination of coursework, homework, classwork, and other assigned tasks, mock exams, etc., to be the overall or the cumulative thing to determine a student's overall achievement. So what are the takeaway and concluding points for some of the countries that I mentioned, specifically the Bahamas and other similar developing countries? So in looking at the data and other news reports as it relates to the Bahamas, so almost 20 years of acquired data and analysis is suggesting the Bahamas, my country of birth, has possibly lost its future generation of bright future educational leaders, especially in the areas of math and science. I'm tremendously disheartened and dismayed by this revelation. Based on the Bahamas' BGCSE results from 2005 to 2022, the reports and data on the continuous poor performance or dismal performance of students can only translate into the notion or thought that the Bahamas, like some other developing countries with weakened education systems and lack of funding, have lost a generation. There seems to be no future generation of high-performing students, and therefore enough students to be able to take on skill work or to pursue college. So again, for almost a 20-year period, you have had more students failing the national standardized exam than those that have actually passed. What is the takeaway and concluding points for the developed and well-resourced nations like the US and the UK? So the takeaway point is, like with the Bahamas, continuous underperformance of some students cannot be viewed as a good thing. So when you have students from certain ethnic groups not performing well, then this is something that needs to be adequately addressed. If it's the case of the school system being under-resourced, then necessary resources have to be put in place. If it's a case of teachers not being properly qualified or certified, then those areas need to be addressed so that all students or each student would have that chance of doing well on standardized exams and anything else. So in light of this, limitation of this work. So again, this work is preliminary. I am revising, upgrading, etc. as time goes on. And so this study basically looked at a few selected standardized tests in some countries. And so wider analysis of more countries and their standardized tests was not possible given the limited time that I had to get a presentation together. So suggestions for future work, in light of the aforementioned limitation and given the importance of such a study to inform international policymakers, parents, students, everyone. Given the limitation in existing literature, it is suggested that other studies be conducted that would give a broader and deeper analysis, and that can really give a broader focus point to more countries' standardized tests to see which groups are doing well and which groups may not be doing as well, and to study or explore some of the limiting factors or some of the factors that may be causing the limitation in some students or some student groups doing well overall. So thank you. And that's my presentation for today.